Hello, hello. Welcome to the first episode of Surviving Sunday, where every week I'll be talking about the latest video game and tech news, and in general, whatever else is going on. Whether it's interesting news, personal updates, or things that are just worth thinking about. Ooh. Oh, sorry about that echo. Anyway, it should be relatively casual, laid back, and it'll be a good place to get up to speed with what's going on and hear some new perspectives. But I'm Kaz. I'll be your host. I'll be here every week, and I'm giving YouTube a try in 2025. Hope everyone's having a good 2025 so far, and we'll see where this goes. But let's jump into it. What I have planned for this week is just covering some of the recent tech news. It'll be a little bit of a possibly shorter episode, we'll see. And then depending on how I'm feeling towards the end, we might play some video games. But I usually reserve that for the other show, Learning to Love Video Games Again, which I am on episode 2 of that. You'd love to check that out. I've been playing Borderlands 3, which has been fun. But I'm also looking for another game to check out. Today, I'll talk about some of the games I played during 2004. Surprise, surprise, not that many were released in 2004, but we'll do a little bit of a top 10 list of what I thought the best games I played in 2004 were. We'll talk about a few other things as well. Today is Sunday, January 5th, and let's get into it. Start of the year has been pretty good, and a few things to talk about. Most importantly, closest thing to us is tomorrow, CES. And one thing that's definitely been on any gamer's mind is where are new graphics cards and how much are they going to cost me? So one important date to be mindful of, the Nvidia keynote will be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. So keep that in mind. Prices will be revealed. We'll find out what and if anything quantum rendering is, possibly DLSS 4, and what that could entail, and I'll see what rumors pan out or don't pan out. One thing I did post on X, jump over to that really quick, is my price estimates for X for the various graphic cards. I am probably wrong on these. So 5070, 649, 5070 Ti, 899, 580 or 5080, 1099, and 5090, 1899. I've since changed that and updated that. That 5090 is probably going to be well over $2,000. My guess was 2,199. I originally did not realize how much stronger the 5090 is over the 5080. I mean, it's essentially just two 5080s slapped together. Kind of insane power draw. So if you're hoping to buy one of these, hopefully you have been saving up, but also have at least 1,000-watt power supply. I haven't been super close on all the tech stuff. I haven't been necessarily following super close, but I am excited about these cards. I am actually in the process of building a new computer. I got a 9080 X3D sitting on my desk. I'm waiting to get a new motherboard, some RAM sticks, and then I'll start upgrading my rig. Right now I have a 3080 GPU. I would love to upgrade to a 5080, but depending on how the prices fall out, the 5070 Ti might actually be what I go for and what I'd probably recommend most consumers go for, especially if it is only possibly like a 10 to 15% power difference. It's hard to say. We don't really know what uh, GDDR7 really means, but it does have the most important thing, or not the most important thing, but an important thing, 16 gigabytes of VRAM. I think the 5070s are completely off the table. This is for the non-gamers, the people that are playing, maybe I shouldn't say that, but the people who are playing like Stardew Valley or maybe Fortnite, 12 gigabytes of VRAM is going to get you there. But if you're looking to play the latest and the greatest, Stalker 2, anything really on Unreal 5, 5.2, 5.3, 5.5, all that new stuff, you really want 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And with all the next generation games being on Unreal, and we're seeing a lot of them ship to PC and console, and the consoles are 16 gigabyte, this is going to become the gold standard for what your GPU needs to be. It is a little low in the sense that, if you look at AMD cards, you're looking in the 20 plus gigabyte range. Nvidia cards tend to be a little bit lower, but 16 gigabytes is going to do the job. I digress. Important thing, tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. PST, CEO Mr. Jensen Huang is going to tell us all about the future of gaming. So, exciting stuff. Don't miss this, but even if you miss it, news is going to be all over the place about it. Alongside this won't be a keynote, but if you're interested, if you're an older gamer like me, Atari is joining the handheld game. 2025 is going to be the year of the handhelds. Obviously, and most likely, Switch 2 is going to arrive. We started to get bigger and more realistic leaks about it. We know it's also going to be on the Nvidia architecture, probably using some sort of DLSS. So we're going to be able to see much better picture quality, much greater power of a small handheld out of it. We're all waiting for SteamOS. That's going to unlock new possibilities for handheld. And then now we have Atari. I don't think this is going to be a powerful handheld. This article talks about it a little bit, but I think it's going to be meant for retro gaming. It does have some interesting features that you can kind of see in the preview of this video. But one, it has a rollerball, so that means it's going to be great for old arcade game styles or style arcade games. So if you're into that, this is going to be a great pickup for you. And they're saying it's only going to be $150. So, maybe if you can't dish out the $300 or $400 that the Switch 2 is, or the $400 that the Steam Deck is, we don't know how much the MSI one is, but it's probably going to be expensive. It's MSI. This might be an alternative for you if you just want something for long bus rides to work or long plane rides for a reasonable $150. And who knows, maybe you can get a refurbished one or a used one a few months after the fact or even cheaper. So I'm excited to learn more about this. So that's what's going on with tech. I wanted to jump into some video game news. Things I really want to talk about today is news about The Division, Stalker 2 news. We got Escape from Tarkov news. There's been drama about the flea market. And then, sorry for the flashbang, Polygon put together this great post today or yesterday about some indie games to look for. So maybe we'll look through this, check out some of these trailers, and talk about what we're seeing. But let's begin with The Division. For those that aren't aware, they have announced that The Division 2 will have its final DLC sometime in 2025, sometime in the next 2 or 3 months. For those that haven't played it, I know no one's been beating the drum about it for the last couple of years, but it's really a great game for what it is. It really scratches a very niche itch. It's a looter shooter. There's definitely been some problems and some history with it. Well, you know what what's been going on with Ubisoft, and they're a problematic company. But love to hear what's going on with the Division. We got a video here from Tuxedo Bandito, and we'll see what he's got to say. So pause the music. We'll get into it.
The Division 2 might not survive 2025. Ubisoft's in financial freefall. The Division 3, it's in the hands of the guy who just gave us the Star Wars Outlaws flop.
So I don't know if this is fair. I haven't played Star Wars Outlaw, but from what I've heard, it was mostly a technical flop. Some story and some kind of diversity and inclusion flops. I don't want to go too deep into that. I don't want to be like grums on the internet. But from an overall story perspective, I heard it was actually pretty good and it was fun enough. You know, I think people have really high expectations for anything Star Wars, similar to Marvel and anything in these large multi-generational IPs. But yes, it didn't sell well, but I think from a overall game design perspective, it wasn't terrible. It was mostly just a technical nightmare.
And let's be real, the Division 2 is no spring chicken. Hey Banditos, Tux here, bringing you that no BS unfiltered gaming talk you don't always want to hear, but you probably need to. And we're going to be tackling that question that's haunted this game for years. Should you be playing the Division 2 in 2025? Will it survive, or is it time to put it to rest?
I'm interested about this as well. I actually reinstalled this a few weeks ago, coincidentally, way before this video came out.
Ominous clouds on the horizon, I'm going to call them out. So buckle up, because this is an unfiltered conversation about the current and future state of the Division 2. There's so much going on, tons to unpack here. Let's do this.
Wait, did we just become best friends? So nice to meet you. I think you're cool.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
All right, let's cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. Should you play the Division 2 in 2025?
Seniors, if you were born,
I really need to buy YouTube Premium. I forgot to do that before the stream, but for now we can just survive through this.
Well, here's the lowdown.
Quick skip
the Division
commercials.
2 is a solid looter shooter with immersive world design, compelling lore, and engaging gameplay. It's easy to get hooked, which explains the small but dedicated community that stuck around. From a game design perspective, it's a thumbs up. And it's so cheap right now, it's kind of crazy. But, and it's a big but, the next 6 months are absolutely critical. Why?
Talk a little bit more about game design. I know it released in a little bit of a rough state where there wasn't a lot of build diversity, there weren't a lot of systems, but following year and a half after its release and its first major DLC, they added a lot more build diversity, player expression, and a whole lot of systems that helped you essentially calibrate your equipment in interesting ways so that, one, it's much easier to get the equipment that you're looking for, but also there's many different ways for you to create a very viable build. I think still today, and maybe Bandito talks about this, the game is a little bit bullet spongy, which I think visually there's a little bit of a fracture there. And what I mean by that is because it has such a, I'm not close to photorealistic art style and hyper-realistic weaponry and some futuristic weaponry, there's a bit of a weirdness about how bullet spongy a lot of the enemies are, especially since they're all humanoids. There's some robots here and there, but it's mostly all humanoids. That makes the game feel essentially bad. And in contrast to something else I've been playing, like Borderlands 3, where it's a lot more cartoony, and yes, there's humanoids, but because of the frankly silly slash artsy slash comic book style look of it, putting 20, 30, or 40 rounds into an enemy doesn't feel as wrong as it does in the Division. So that's one of my big criticisms of the game, and that still persists to this day. But besides that, as he's saying, it is a great game with great systems and plenty of systems to sink your teeth into and learn and understand if you're looking for an in-depth game.
Why? Because 2025 is stacked with heavy hitter game releases, and Ubisoft's messy handling of the franchise could push The Division 2 further into obscurity. It would be completely naive to ignore Ubisoft itself is in chaos when
I
evaluating
hear the last
future
year
of
and a
the Division
half
franchise
around this
in
game has been pretty
2025.
bad, though.
Delays, cancellations, and financial turbulence scream instability. Experts are even speculating that Ubisoft's restructuring and potential privatization could shake its franchises to the core. That puts a giant question mark over not just The Division 2's longevity,
I hope they do
but also
restructure.
over the viability of The Division 3. So forget any spoon-fed toxic positivity or blind nostalgia. If you're thinking about playing The Division 2 in 2025, you need to see the big picture. Let's zoom out and take a closer look. First, let's talk about Ubisoft. It's no secret they've had a rough go of it lately. Financial budgets, delays across their entire portfolio, and some, let's call it creative decision-making, have left their reputation in the red. At Massive Entertainment, the studio behind The Division 2 hasn't exactly been knocking it out of the park in the community management department. Updates are slow, communication is cryptic, and promises, well, they're often broken or underwhelming. Let's add some gasoline to the fire,
Classic.
shall we?
That's a big
Juicebad
problem in the
Union
whole
recently
industry right
predicted
now,
that
though.
Ubisoft might be headed for privatization or even dismantling in 2025. In his newsletter, he pointed out Ubisoft's nosediving stock price, dropping from $28.19 to $12.30, making the company a prime takeover target.
I don't know. So, as terrible as it sounds, to me, this sounds like a good thing as well. And obviously, I don't love the idea of people losing their jobs or their livelihoods, but I am a big proponent for the consolidation of the games industry. I think it's gotten too big. There's too many players. There's just too many games out right now. It's creating a flywheel where no one can succeed. And obviously, there's been a couple of success stories in the recent history. Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, um, Space Marines, Astro Boy, many things like that. But the far majority of everything that's hitting the market on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis is just slop. Actually, happened to pull this up a couple days ago. I'll share it with you all. I was looking at Steam releases and the amount of Steam releases that happen. Oh, shoot. Here we go. Yes, I was looking at how many games got released this Steam year over year, and assume these numbers are 10 to 15% off, but directionally they should be accurate. And I'd love to just see a consolidation. We are up to almost 19,000 games being released in a year on Steam. That's insanity. And that's probably quite representative of most of the games that come to the PC platform. Sure, unless you're one of the big five like League of Legends or Valorant or Honkai Star Rail, Genshin, sure, you're not on Steam. But if you're not on Steam besides one of those 5 games, you're essentially irrelevant. I mean, to this day, I probably have 200 games on my Epic Games account, all free, never paid $1, never installed a single one, never played a single one. Steam is the king. Steam is the truth in this world. But also, additionally, if you go on Steam and you look at almost any game category and sort by top rated or most played or any of those kind of key indicators that say how good a game is, it's going to be hard to find a game in the top even 50, top 100 that wasn't made before 2015. So, if you look at 2015, we were already up to close to 3,000 games per year. And we just continued to grow year over year. We're creating this environment where I feel like because there's so many games coming out every day, every week, players are forced to be hypercritical about any piece of content that they see. Which once again creates this flywheel. If they're being hypercritical about everything, it essentially all devolves down into XYZ is shit, ABC is shit, And it creates this dynamic where anything that releases that isn't essentially so extremely innovative and groundbreaking, it is just terrible. So, you know, hearing things like, hey, Ubisoft has failed enough and they're thinking about downsizing or possibly selling off IP, I think it would help rebalance this game industry. I think we need to, as once again, would hate for people to lose jobs, but there are just too many small 2, 3, 4 person indie studios making slop come together, make a slightly larger game, learn to collaborate, and make something better. And there's far too many AAA studios that are also making slop, and we need to get these numbers back down to these single digit thousand numbers in that like 1/10, you know, 10,000 to 5,000 range, so that not only maybe as a player base and a consumer we could take a step back and start to appreciate games again, but we're also now forced to on a you know daily basis decide, hey, am I going to keep playing this game or am I ready to check out the next thing? So just some quick thoughts about that, but consolidation's good. I'm hoping game industry consolidation happens. We need it. It's going to be best for the whole market. Um, you know, there's no reason why, for example, we could take a look at a game like Daisy and Scum and Day One. There's no reason why those teams couldn't unify in some sort of way to finally make Daisy even a greater game. I mean, for God's sakes, Daisy has had the exact same hand bug in it for almost 10 years, and they have not been able to fix it. And on the other half, we have Scum, which has its own problems as well, but they're making essentially a game that's 80%, 90% similar, just changing the dynamic slightly that, oh, it's prisoners on an island, but it's also measurably a worse game in every way. There's no reason why both of these things need to exist, and a consumer needs to make a choice between those two. Let's just have a better DayZ or whatever it may be, just using it as an example. And then to his other point, I think it'd be really cool to see Ubisoft to start to sell off some of their IP. I've been thinking about playing Ghost Recon, maybe jumping back into the Division. I don't even know if they're around anymore. I haven't stayed up to it, but I'd love to see DICE's version of the Division, or I forget the studio name behind Ready or Not. That they've been doing a great job at that game. What if they took their spin at something like Ghost Recon, Wildlands 2, or whatever that may be? Their studio is probably too small right now to create a AAA quality game of that scale at this point, but if they were able to purchase it, boost up their team, 2x their team, so that they're still small but much much larger than they are today, still much much smaller than where Ubisoft is. Maybe we could start to revitalize some life into these long time IPs that we all love, that we want to continue to see successful. Jump back in the video.
The kicker is that key franchises like Rainbow Six Siege and Assassin's Creed might actually be worth more sold off individually than as part of Ubisoft's crumbling empire. With shareholders circling like vultures, the company could start auctioning off its crown jewels sooner rather than later. Meanwhile,
I know I talked about it. It's very unlikely that they sell off IP. I don't know. Like, do they want to preserve the company and get rid of some IP and maybe just focus on something like Rainbow Six Siege and stay afloat as a smaller company? Or would they rather just take the whole ship down or believe that they can save it? I don't know. There's not that many great case studies of big legacy studios like Ubisoft selling IP off to other ones. It's usually smaller studios being bought out by big studios and buying their IP. Uh, but maybe this could be a big case for that. And if that becomes successful, maybe we start seeing other big studios starting to sell off uh, frozen or less successful IP to smaller studios that do want to, make something special out of it.
Well, Ubisoft dropped a bombshell. X-Defiant is officially sunsetting in
Don't care.
2025. This is a huge L considering how much Ubisoft bet on it. The fallout? Well, only the closure of 2 production studios and nearly 300 layoffs, a brutal sign of deeper trouble behind the curtain. Oh, and as if things couldn't get worse.
150 employees for a game studio, I think it's still pretty small. Assume that maybe 100 of them, 110 of them are engineers, maybe 10 marketing, 10 system designers of some sort, and then other operational roles. 100, 120 engineers. It's a lot of people, and once again, hate people losing jobs, but um, you can see how 100 people can make a pretty polished game. Like X Defiant. Once again, I didn't care for it, but I don't think it was a bad game. I just think it entered the market at a time where there were better options supported by bigger teams. So that's just like a hard thing to get into. And also, anything with this, a Ubisoft original tag instantly loses like 10 or 15 credibility points in today's market. But I don't think Ubisoft understands that about its brand right now, and I don't understand how they don't understand that. So hopefully they have a rude awakening sooner than later. And similar to NetEase and what's the company that makes Throne of Liberty? I'm blanking right now. NCSoft. NCSoft is on their redemption journey right now, where they're trying to not piss off players and show that they're not a scummy company, and being very favorable towards the player and not over indexing on gamification and pay to win, especially in Thorn of Liberty, even though that game still has plenty of pay to win. Ubisoft needs their similar journey right now, or they're just not going to make it as a company.
Sunsetting in 2025. This is a huge L considering how much Ubisoft bet on it. The fallout? Well, only the closure of 2 production studios and nearly 300 layoffs, a brutal sign of deeper trouble behind the curtain. Oh, and as if things couldn't get worse, Ubisoft's stock hits a 10-year low. And yet on September 21st, they announced that Division 3 is now in development at Massive Entertainment.
Not only is it at an all-time low, 2024 was a year that the stock market brought like 20 plus % returns, which there's only been like, I think 5 or 6, 7, 8 instances of that ever in history. So it's like a double L. You really have to mess up to be an all-time low in a stock market like this. And not only that, the game industry, even though like from a deployment standpoint has not been great, it's been growing year over year.
Interesting timing, huh? But wait, there's more. Remember Rainbow Six Mobile and the Division resurgence? Yeah, me neither, because they've been radio silent. Announced back in 2022, these free-to-play mobile shooters were supposed to drop before March 2025. Now, both have been delayed indefinitely, with Ubisoft saying the devs need more time to meet expectations. Translation, Ubisoft's house is on fire and no one knows if the sprinklers even work. All right, let's talk about the delay of Assassin's Creed Shadows and what it means. So Ubisoft pushed the game's release from November 2024 to February 14th, 2025. Happy Valentine's Day. This isn't just a minor scheduling change, it's a big deal for Ubisoft. The delay has already had financial repercussions, with Ubisoft shares dropping over 17% following the announcement. That's crazy. The company also lowered its financial forecast, signaling that the postponement is hitting their bottom line hard. For players, the delay could be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it might mean a more polished and complete game at launch, which is always a good thing. On the other hand, it could also indicate deeper issues within Ubisoft's development process.
It is a lose-lose situation. I think the market thing isn't super representative of if the game is going to be good or not. You know, stock market, it's very speculative. A lot of people that are in the stock market obviously don't play games. They just hear delay, and obviously they're going to sell off the stock, and the stock price is going to go down. It is a lose-lose situation in the sense that Ubisoft and really any studio is like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you delay a game, you get shit on for delaying the game. If you don't delay the game, you get shit on for releasing a game that doesn't have polish. You know, knock on wood, this game does come out not extremely bugged. Hard to maybe believe that based on some of their recent other releases, but you know, at least they're giving it the good old college try and understanding, hey, let's polish this up a little bit more. Let's maybe fix some of the criticisms that we've been hearing about this game. You know, they might only have a couple more at bats, and hopefully we see at least one more iteration of the Division and one more iteration of Ghost Recon before they shut down, if they shut down. Splinter Cell, that's not a thing anymore. Would have loved to see one of those come out again. But we'll see. I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for Ubisoft. Even if it did shut down, I don't think it would be this year. It'd probably be sometime next year or 2 years out. It is a big company, and they have a lot of assets to sell, but also a lot of headcount to get rid of if they needed to downsize, which could extend the runway quite a bit. And we also don't know what else they have in the cooker, what they're baking that they haven't announced yet.
Especially considering the recent controversies surrounding the game. In the end, while waiting a bit longer might be frustrating, if it leads to a better gaming experience, it could be worth it. However, the financial and reputational impact on Ubisoft is already unfolding, and it remains to be seen how they'll navigate these changes leading up to the new release date. Now, here's why this matters. What is a more lucrative franchise for Ubisoft? Assassin's Creed or The Division? I'll wait. So if you chose AC, you were right. In the latest financial report, Ubisoft revealed its highest grossing franchises in terms of consumer spending. And it's worth noting that Ubisoft doesn't typically share this data. So this is what we know. Over the past 10 years, from September 2014 to...
It's always interesting when a large company starts to share a new data type in its investor reports. I don't know if it's necessarily indicative of anything, but it is rare. Oftentimes, the companies start to share less. Classic example of WoW stopped sharing active user accounts and things like that. You know, sharing more data often leads to a lower stock price. Well, no, that's not fully fair to say, but more often than time, I would say companies start to share less data. In case it may affect their stock price in the future.
To September 2024, the brands that have generated the most revenue for Ubisoft are, drumroll,
probably
Assassin's
Siege.
Creed, approximately 4.4 billion USD. Rainbow Six Siege, over 3.85 billion.
Can't believe that game's still going, but it's a great game.
Interestingly, Rainbow Six Siege alone is comparable in consumer spending to the entire Assassin's Creed series. Since its release in 2015, this game has become one of the major titles in the company's portfolio. But check this out. Ubisoft also has 3 other game series where consumer spending has exceeded $1 billion. So we got Ghost Recon, Just Dance. Yeah, you heard me right. Just Dance. I know.
Wow.
I know. And guess what else?
That's all based on the pre-hot tub era on Twitch. All the OF girls used to play Just Dance. You gotta get paid. I respect it.
The Division. They didn't disclose precise data for each franchise, but the Division franchise delivering over $1 billion to the...
The Division is a highly marketable game. The environment, the characters, the play style. It's what, on paper, it's what gamers want. I'm not surprised that it's sold over $1 billion.
The Ubisoft portfolio is nuts. You'd think that amount of money would make a statement to the publisher, but apparently $1 billion isn't good enough for Ubisoft to give it priority support. But it's probably big enough to catch the eye of another. And if that Juiced Van Drunen fellow is correct and Ubisoft starts selling off its assets, this would be a prime candidate. Let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws, the latest game from Massive Entertainment. It dropped in August 2024 with big promises of a Han Solo style adventure, but landed more like Jar Jar Binks. I hate that guy. Critics slammed it for repetitive gameplay and shallow mechanics. Polygon even called it Visually stunning, but ultimately boring. Ouch. But I gotta say, that description sounds like a typical Ubisoft open world game, doesn't it? So the sales, not great. So Outlaws sold just 1 million copies in its first month.
That's very rough.
I know that sounds great, but for a Star Wars title, that's extremely disappointing.
Yeah.
So to compare,
Million titles is a great milestone for a medium-sized studio. GSC, Stalker 2, broke over 1 million titles sold, probably closer to 2 million now. That's huge for a studio their size. But a studio like Massive and Ubisoft, they're probably expecting to sell close to 3, hoping for 5.
Assassin's Creed Mirage, which released the same year, hit 5 million copies in its first 3 months. That kind of gap isn't just noticeable, it's alarming for a company like Ubisoft, especially when it costs them out of pocket to pick up that title before they even started development. So now here's where it gets interesting, or concerning, depending on your perspective. Julian Garrity, the guy behind Outlaws, is taking the reins for The Division 3, and that transition has been officialized. Ubisoft just made him executive producer for the whole Division franchise. If you're wondering, wait,
I don't know how I feel
the
about
same
that.
guy who helped make The Division a hit? You're right. Under his lead, the first game sold over 20 million copies by 2019.
That's
and
big.
paved the way
Division
for
1
Division
arguably
2.
is better than
after
2.
the lukewarm reception
From
for Outlaws,
the gameplay
you have
standpoint.
to wonder, is this the Julian Garrity who brought the Division to life, or the one who just put out a Star Wars game that missed the mark? Only time will tell if the Division 3 will be his big redemption.
Here's what I will say about that. Because it was a Star Wars title, Lucasfilms and Disney were 100% heavily involved. And knowing both of those companies, they have opinions about everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the failure of that game was because of red tape, feedback from Disney that just made it impossible to do a good job, or slowed down the process so much that it took them forever to move forward. And by the time a release date came, they were just so far behind the 8 ball that there was no saving it. So I think that's an important thing to realize, especially with these companies that are hyper protective about their IPs, about how it's protected, how it's portrayed. That being said, trying to think if there's other recent Star Wars games that have been really successful as a counterpoint, but I can't think of any. I'm not a massive Star Wars fanboy, but I do know that working with Disney historically has been very problematic. And I would imagine it's only more problematic with such a sensitive and big IP like Star Wars.
Redemption, or just another letdown. Okay, so we're finally at that big question. How does all this behind the scenes turmoil affect the Division 2 and the upcoming The Division 3? Well, for one, it would be completely naive to think there won't be any impact. So Ubisoft has previously shown that no title is immune to being left behind if it no longer meets their financial or strategic goals. Have
they announced anything? Jeez, this keyboard. Whatever. I'm not going to worry about this right now.
Cancellation of The Division Heartland in 2024, for instance, was largely due to the company's decision to reallocate resources to other higher priority projects. That was X-Defiant, right? Ouch. That one really hurt the Division community, especially when X-Defiant tanks. Face palm for sure. Either way, this shift highlights Ubisoft's willingness to cut losses and focus on what they perceive as bigger opportunities, even when a game has potential. Prime example. Creative director Yannick Bonkra, I always say his name wrong, sorry about that, revealed that support for Division 2 was originally intended to end in 2020, but investors prompted the company to continue its support. Of course, we learned this in hindsight many years later. So given Ubisoft's past decisions, it is possible that the Division 2 could see its post-launch support cut back if newer projects like Assassin's Creed Shadows, which we know is a Ubisoft golden child that has controversy surrounding it, captures more attention and resources. This could lead to tighter budgets and more conservative decision-making, potentially stalling support for the Division franchise. And priority shifts like these happen frequently and always behind the scenes, which is why Division players always feel they are left in the lurch with unresolved issues and a lack of new content. There's nobody there working on it. This reminds me, Ubisoft has job postings up for the Division 3, and you've probably come across YouTubers hyping this up as a positive development. But let's be real, that is super surface surface level thinking, devoid of any critical analysis. If anyone just digs a little bit deeper, like a fucking inch, it's clear this isn't a sign of a healthy company building for the bright future. It's a desperate attempt to keep the wheels turning while the ship takes on tons of water. But I have a question. Why would anyone in their right mind join a company that's making headlines for all the wrong reasons? If you knew the company was tanking, would you apply? Ubisoft is teetering on the edge of privatization and potentially being dismantled, with rumors swirling about asset sell-offs. I mean, massive studios themselves are probably shitting their pants wondering if they're going to have a job in a few months. So combine that with the recent layoffs of nearly 300 employees and the closure of 2 studios, and the optics aren't exactly screaming stability here. Here's the kicker. These job postings might not even be serious. Companies
I think
often
Massive would be fine. I think there'd be a lot of companies interested in a team like Massive.
Illusion of progress or complying with hiring policies. So for example, even though we had an internal candidate at companies I've worked for in the past, we had to put the job posting up on the internet or whatever for equal opportunity reasons or whatever. I'm no HR guy. But odds are Ubisoft is quietly pulling talent from within, either redeploying staff from other projects or rehiring some of the very people they just laid off. Wouldn't that be smarter anyways? This is a textbook move to keep up appearances, but it raises a bigger question. If the future of the company is so uncertain, why would anyone take the gamble? Somebody please answer me this. Okay, I love this game, but I have to hold back my laugh when I ask this question. Is the Division 2 successful right now? I have to say, by no realistic business definition could this be considered a success right now. You don't have to go too far back in time to recall the major PC stability issues plaguing the player base. It tarnished the game's reputation. Despite concerns for customer experience, they even released it on Steam in this unstable state, further creating frustration. Don't believe me? Just go back and look at all the negative reviews. And for the longest time, it seemed as if the game was just going to be left broken and PC players abandoned. In hindsight, we learned it sat that way for a crazy long time because they disbanded the developer team that had the experience to fix it. These guys were working on other titles like Star Wars and Avatar and apparently X-Defiant probably. This, of course, was all because they thought they were going to end support for the Division 2, and then they changed their mind, which meant there wasn't anybody left on the team to resolve these PC issues. So finally, in an attempt to remedy this, Ubisoft rolled out Project Resolve in year 5 of Season 3. So this was this big comprehensive update aimed at improving player experience and laying the groundwork for future content.
It's so much whiplash. I don't understand how a company can operate this much,
so there was some other
this
game
poorly,
things and quality of life updates, but
ripping things out and putting it back in and trying to save things.
More significant loss in player
feels
base
like there's like a lack of like
problems
strategic
that
thinking
persisted,
in the
including
leadership.
crashes, and things just continued to get worse. The seasonal structure in the Division 2 operates on a 4-month cycle, which is notably longer than the industry standard of 3 months. And if you actually play the game, it feels like a lifetime. So this decision was made with the intention of delivering higher quality releases. However, the community has yet to see the promised improvements. In fact, every time we get a patch or some sort of update, we expect it to break the game. It's just what we do. We expect it. It's not being negative. It's experience that has taught us that. So the longer seasons and Project Resolve ended up pushing out all of the content, including the Brooklyn DLC, out to 2025. So
wait, for what year is this? Okay, so it was posted tail end 24 October. Wait, Brooklyn DLC. Yeah, Brooklyn DLC is coming out. Oh, I didn't realize it's coming out so soon. February 28th. That's great. Maybe I'll have to check this game out, re-download it, or I guess I already re-downloaded it, but take it from there. And then July 1st starts Division 3? Maybe this is going to be official announcement or like beta. There's no way I could see this being the release date for Division 3. But they don't have any major releases scheduled for this year, so they do need something. So maybe this is possible.
So the extended seasons and delays have left the game feeling extremely drawn out. You have to be aware of this if you're going to play in 2025. Whatever content we have, whether it's new or existing, it becomes stale long before the next update arrives. Speaking of year 6, season 2, most players hit that board mark around 6 weeks. Overall, this has led to the sense that the game is failing to keep pace with player expectation.
I feel like that's fine. You don't need to make a single game your entire personality. you could get 6 weeks, 5 weeks of a game and enjoy it. That's great. You know, almost 2 months, not really, a month and a half. Something new might have come out, or there's a backlog game that you've been wanting to play. Just jump to that. I feel like I would love to be able to commit a month, 2 months to a game without feeling pressured that I'm missing out on a whole bunch of other games because I stuck to something for 2 months. It's kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier about consolidation. There's just too many damn games coming out in a year. I'd love to get back to a world where we only have like 1,000 games a year, 2,000 games a year. At best, maybe 10% of them are going to be relevant to me, and all of them are going to be to a much higher quality. 100 games in a year, I still wouldn't play 100 games or 50 games in a year, maybe 50, depending on how big they are. But it's much more reasonable than the like 100 to 200 games that I feel like I should have played this year. Well, maybe not this last year. 2024 wasn't the best gaming year, but let's call it between 2024 and 2022 or whatever.
So what happened next is we faced a series of unfortunate events hitting the game community in rapid succession. So back in May of 2024, we were hit with the bombshell, and this echoed through time. Seasonal characters were coming in Seasons 2.0, slated to release in Year 6, Season 2, which is where we're at right now. And that was a few months away at the time. That had the community in an uproar. The introduction of seasonal characters in Seasons 2.0 was intended to refresh the gameplay experience by having players start a new character each season, similar to the approach taken by the Diablo franchise. However, because of the significant backlash from the community, Ubisoft decided to reevaluate Seasons 2.0.
I think that's a bad idea. I think seasonal characters is a good idea. I think the community shot themselves in the foot. I understand that you've put in 5 or 6 years into a character and it sucks to lose it. But if you intend to play the game, start from scratch. There's been so many other successful games that have done this seasonal loop. But I think it also talks to a larger question around these like live service games where developers haven't really figured out how to sustain a player base for as long as some of these games stay alive. And today it's seasons and season passes, which I think as a industry we're all burnt out on. They're usually pretty shallow and surface level. Um, but also in these like live service games that usually have a PvP aspect to it or a competitive aspect, it's like how do you get new players excited about the game that like even if a new season comes out and there is a character refresh from day one, hour one, you feel like you're days behind because all the sweats have everything dialed in to a T and know exactly what to do, where to go, what to farm, all that stuff. I think the game industry and devs really need to think about like how do you better level the playing field for new players against veteran players, and how can we allow for things like better twitch reflexes and better aim in the case of shooters be really the X factor in who wins an engagement, who gets ahead, versus game knowledge. The multiplier and game knowledge in a standard game today, for example, even like Tarkov, is insane. You take a mechanically poor player in Tarkov with extremely high game knowledge against a mechanically elite player with virtually no or very little game knowledge. The player with the game knowledge is going to win 49 out of 50 engagements. Maybe 40 out of 50 engagements, but still like a irrational amount. And I think that's really what kills games in the long run, especially in year 2, year 3. Not being able to get new, fresh players into your player base and sustain them across a longer time because they just get burnt out and burned by veteran players. And that's not even touching upon like player toxicity and all that stuff. But we all fix again where we need to, so I'm less concerned about that.
and ended up progressing without seasonal characters. This caused some delays, of course, but meanwhile, Year 6 Season 1 launched with some of the worst gear and exotics we had ever seen. This was after the community gave extensive and precise feedback during PTS testing, yet for 2 seasons in a row, we received duds. But that's not all. There were serious delays to the launch, followed by major bugs in the new season, broken benches, glitched control points, and XP nerfs that were plaguing the game. Oh, that's not even the doozy. Title Update 21.1 was the doozy, which hit about a month later. So after a 3-hour delay, the game was absolutely broken. Old bugs were reintroduced, and so numerous they seemed to reach every corner of the game. All this while the game has been losing players since the introduction of the idea of seasonal characters. And remember, Project Resolve was supposed to give us more quality releases. That was not the case. In the end, all we had was lost time. So this 21.1 game-breaking patch, a month went by and the community had yet to have a stable game. Finally, Seasons 2.0 was introduced, and that gave us a new seasonal structure with modifiers, which in the end significantly shifted the game dynamics. However, bugs and tuning issues led to an extremely divided community. So I put up a poll, and in the end, it turned out that half the players had either opted out of using modifiers or had left the game entirely. And those players that are playing without modifiers are going to start feeling, if they already haven't, forgotten, potentially leading to further departures. Because as far as we know, the devs are dug in on seasonal modifiers, and we're only going to be getting more of that. But the real problem was the quality of release. These things needed to be tuned back, and a lot of them were bugged. And to this day, the game continues to lose players because massive
Are modifiers a bad system? Common knowledge would say no. Maybe they were just bad modifiers or uninteresting modifiers. But I also understand that modifiers in a shooter are hard, and you're kind of limited in what you can do without exaggerating the problem that I said earlier, where the Division is a pretty bullet spongy game, and it can feel bad at times because of that.
Studios is slow to pace and basically silent as months go by between any real communication. And that's basically where we are right now. So what's the deal with the Division 2 in 2025? Well, let's be real. It's been a while since we've seen any major new content. So the last significant update, Paradise Lost, was in Title Update 19, dropped over a year ago. Yeah, the community is quite desperate and looking forward to that DLC in Brooklyn sometime in 2025, hopefully March. But if you're a diehard fan, there's still fun to be had. The gameplay loop, when it works, is addictive, and build optimization is one of a kind. But if you're expecting regular updates, cutting edge content, or groundbreaking innovations, lower those expectations. No, seriously, lower. For years, the Division community has been on the lookout for the next looter shooter that could dethrone the Division franchise. Nothing has come close. And it's why in 2023, 66 games accounted for 80% of all playtime. And most of that went to titles 6 or more years old.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Back in the 2015s, 2018s, so on and so forth, where there were much fewer games made of higher quality. That's where the good stuff was. But what's up here? Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, that makes sense. Yes, forever. The forever games. Put your lifetime into them. Rocket League. I mean, I imagine that these games haven't changed in the last virtually 10 years. This is a bad list. I mean, these are going to be the same. It's nice to see that up there. I didn't really realize how big they are on console. I don't really play console. It makes sense with it being I guess a $4 billion or $2 billion IP for Ubisoft. Starfield, wow. That doesn't belong there. But good for you, Microsoft. Hogwarts Legacy, Smash. Interesting.
Games like The Division 2, Fortnite, and GTA 5 thrive because they've built a strong, lasting community. Players stick around because they've invested time, money, and effort. And let's not forget the comfort and nostalgia these games offer, making it harder for newer titles to compete.
I very much agree with him, though. Similar to Stalker Gamma, these games that I want to like have an itch for, similar to Division, there is nothing really in the market that plays and is like Division and gives me the experience of the Division. And as problematic as the Division is, which has kind of stopped me from playing it or retrying it, there's a deep desire within me and probably a lot of players in the market that want a Division style game, but just a better, more thought out one, a little bit more streamlined. Like I said, lots of systems, but maybe in some places too many systems. I don't know exactly where the game is currently, but the last time I played, it was approaching that slightly too many systems breakpoint, similar to Path of Exile. But can't scale it back too far because, like Path of Exile 2, crafting being an example, you scale back the systems too much, the game kind of loses its soul. And that's not to say Path of Exile 2 isn't great as it is right now, and it is going to continue to evolve, and I imagine it will become another great, just like Path of Exile 1, but it does have some growing to do that, Path of Exile 1 originally did. It unfortunately just outgrew itself.
Pete. That said, the Division community is tired. Stagnation has left even the most dedicated players weary and bored. As we look ahead.
Oh, 1 second. Something has gone terribly. There we go.
To 2025, the competition is really starting to heat up. A wave of fresh, exciting titles like Marvel's GTA 6, Borderlands 4, which has a TV series out, by the way, which is pretty cool.
So
Dune
excited for that.
And Doom: The Dark Ages is set to arrive. There's no
2025 is going to be a great year for high-quality games.
Making it harder for the game to maintain its already declining player base, which is also started to play other games like Path of Exile, The First Descendant, Helldivers 2, blah, blah, blah. The next big hope for the franchise is the highly anticipated Brooklyn DLC. But here's the problem. It's being developed and published by the same studio and company that have consistently failed this community. Until Ubisoft and Massive show signs of real change, better communication, transparency, and accountability,
that is a fair concern.
It's hard to expect anything different. Bugs, delays, broken promises, it's the pattern players have come to expect. Now, I know some fans are calling for the franchise to move on to...
And with the sentiment and the communication Ubisoft has had with the Assassin's Creed title, the Japanese one that's coming out soon. Ooh, I really hope they're not digging in with Division 3 and just sticking to their guns. And hopefully they're going to be a little bit more open to feedback from the community.
To the Division 3. But look, launching the Division 3 now with the community in its current fractured state would be a huge mistake. It's not just about needing a new game. It's about repairing the relationship between the developer and the player base. If the Brooklyn DLC launches with the same issues we've seen before, any initial excitement will fizzle fast. I think that the new DLC will bring players back in hopes that things have changed, but if they haven't, then they will leave. We see this with every major release. So before the DLC drops, Ubisoft and Massive need to focus on fixing the Division 2, address the bugs, rebuild trust with the community. That's huge. Simply communicate with us would be a start, and show that they've learned from past mistakes. Only then can the Brooklyn DLC and eventually the Division 3 have a shot at success. So
one thing I will say about the Brooklyn DLC is it's very much being marketed as a story DLC. So I would not expect very many systems changes, a new weapon type, or anything like that could add into the game. I do believe they'll probably fix a whole bunch of bugs, maybe move some things around, maybe fix some of this game's awful UI. But I wouldn't expect any large system changes. I think it's going to be almost purely a narrative-driven DLC. Hopefully for 10, 15, 20 bucks, which at that point it would probably be worth it. If you're looking at $30, $40, $50 for a narrative-driven DLC, I don't know. I think it's going to be really hard to get players excited about that and back into the game.
If that all sounds negative, sorry. But like I said, we are going to keep it real around here. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything or be that Ubisoft shill and pretend everything is hunky-dory. Let's look forward. This is looking forward in the reality of the situation. So if you're asking me, should you play the Division 2 in 2025? Absolutely. I bet you weren't expecting that. It's still one of a kind. The truth is, if you love the core
Hell
gameplay
yeah.
and know what to expect, then absolutely play this game. Keep an eye on the 2025 roadmap though. Beyond the DLC slated for March, everything's shrouded in mystery. But here's the catch. I wouldn't recommend putting any more dollars into the game until we see real change from Massive's community management. What I'm doing is keeping my wallet close to my chest. I'm not spending any dollars on The Division. Not until I start to see change from the development team, because that's who I feel like I'm investing in, not the game. And if other people think like me, then the future.
It'll also be a clear indicator about how they are communicating and working on Division 3. You know, this final DLC and seeing how they behave and how they think about the systems and all that good stuff is probably going to be the same team that is also going to transition to the Division 3 or already are working in Division 3. So that's going to be the first flag that we'll have as an indicator of who this new team is and how they're going to work with their community.
Of the Division depends on whether Ubisoft can learn to treat its community and its franchises with the care they deserve. Actions speak louder than promises, and right now, the silence is deafening. And pay attention to what's happening with their other golden children like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Star Wars, and Rainbow Six. That said, now's the perfect time to start exploring other games. The uncertainty surrounding the Division franchise and the snail's pace of progress makes it hard to bet your gaming future here. There's a whole gaming world out there waiting, and honestly, it's better to have options in case the storm clouds over Ubisoft don't clear up anytime soon. So, what do you think? Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Tuxedo Bandito, and if you found this video helpful...
All right. Great video by Tuxedo Bandito. I like him. I don't know why I'm not subscribed to him. Maybe I'm not subscribed to him on this account, but I'm excited for the Division 3. I might get back into the Division 2. I'd love to get your thoughts on the video. I'll link it down below in the description. As I mentioned, I do have Learning to Love Games Again, where I stream games that have been on my backlog or games that I miss. If you think the Division 2 is a good game to stream, let me know. If there's other games that you think I should stream, let me know. There's been a couple games I've been itching to play, like I mentioned, Ghost Recon, Stalker 2, Gamma, Pillars of Eternity. Maybe I finally try Kingdom Come Deliverance. There's a long laundry list of games that I want to play. To name a few more, let me open up my list. I could rattle them off for you. And if any of those tickle your fancy, just let me know. What else do we have here? Cyberpunk. I'm behind on that. I have the Mario Odyssey games. Nier Automata, classic, highly loved game. I'm behind on Final Fantasy VII Remake, God of War, maybe Ready or Not. I definitely kind of want to play Gray Zone Warfare, PvE mode most likely, because I'm done with PvP games, at least of that sort. But I might wait till one more DLC comes out. I think the Night Ops one was good. I think they fixed a bunch of their UI, fixed a bunch of their quests and bugs, but I think that game probably needs another pass or two. So I'll hold off on that. Maybe that'll be like a summer game. But let me know if there's any games that you played in 2024 that you loved and think that I should check out. Please let me know. Happy to check them out. I'll live stream them. We'll do a little let's play on my journey to love games again. But damn, getting through this video, 23 minutes, took an hour. I had a couple other things I wanted to catch up on. Maybe I'll save these videos for another time. We'll close this guy out. We'll close these out as well. And I do want to quickly listen to this video around Stalker 2 news, just so we know what's going on. I love Stalker 2. Probably the best game I played in 2024. To the point where I don't have a coding background. I am familiar with tech, that I am learning, and I will be creating a Stalker 2 overhaul mod over the next year or two. Probably won't be as extreme as Gamma, but I think the bones of this game are excellent. I'll start with some basic stuff early on, but then once the modding tools come out, officially supported ones, that's where we're going to go wild with it. And if you have any interest in that, feel free to reach out. Always going to need partners to collaborate on that and make something awesome. High level, it's going to be somewhat roguelitey, where speed is going to be more required than maybe default Stalker, but ultimately it's still a Stalker game and it's you against the zone, and you're going to have to take your time. We're going to introduce a whole bunch of new systems, do a ballistics overhaul, do an armor overhaul, and just make the economy a lot more interesting. A lot we can do there, but when I'm ready, I'll share more about that. And also, I'm sure I'll probably do some live streams about making my system design docs for anyone that's into game design, wants to learn game design. I'm figuring it out myself, or videos of me learning the code. Uh, I'll probably learn Blueprint up front, but we'll see where that goes. But since we're cutting out those other videos, I wanted to jump back into here and turn on my music. I want to talk about, in case you missed this, Drop Frames. So today they did their game of the year, and they have their top 10 games for themselves. For those that aren't familiar, this is a Sunday show where they also talk about games and what they've been playing. You probably know one of these three gentlemen. It be JP, Go Carnage, of course, and Ezekiel third. I don't watch much of Zeke, but he does have pretty good taste in games. Pretty familiar with Co. Usually align very closely to his taste in games. And then JP is kind of all over the place. You know, there's things that he likes that I wouldn't really ever play, like Final Fantasy, MMORPG, Metaphors at the Me game, Dragon Age is a Me game. It should have been a Me game, but this one isn't. Star Wars Outlaw, I know he's a huge Marvel fan. I'm not. But quickly wanted to share this, kind of their 6 games that they thought were the best of the year, in case you're wondering what you should be playing in the near future. Marvel Rivals, one for me. I'm not a hero shooter person. I know there's a big community of players for these games, but when I look at something like Overwatch, there's nothing in the world that seems like a less interesting game or a game style to me. It's chaotic, it feels unorganized, it's just not something for me. But I will say there's clearly something special with Marvel Rivals because it's been able to pull the COD players away, the Apex Legends players away, the Fortnite players away. You know, it's still a fresh title, and it might be the flavor of the month. So we'll see how relevant it stays over the next 2 or 3 months. But clearly, there's something special here. Warhammer 40K is actually a game I'm surprised I didn't play. It's definitely going to be added to my backlog. And Astro Boy, sure, maybe I'll check it out. Probably maybe next year. It's a platformer. I don't want to get into the debate if it deserves Game of the Year or not, or if it's a great game or not. It won, clearly. People love it. I mean, 3 streamers here. It's on. I guess Go never played it, but at least 2 of the streamers, top 3. So there's something special there. And both of these streamers are usually pretty critical of games, so there's got to be something special here. Stalker 2, absolutely brilliant game, brilliant environments. I am curious about Indiana Jones. V Rising, big surprise here, big surprise here. Core Keeper as well. And then lastly, a game that I think I would love as well is Pacific Drive. So at some point, I'm going to need to check this out. But looking at this, I wanted to take a look at the games I played this year. And as you can see, about half my games were not from this year. But these are the games I played in 2024 for the first time. The ones that have a yellow border were released or that came out of early access in 2024. This is roughly in the. Here, I'll make this a little wider. This is roughly in the order that I played them in. Started out the year out with Total War, went into Last Epoch, their first season, which was pretty good. I didn't play their second season. Dark and Darker was a really good time. Stone Shard, if you like a turn-based RPG that almost plays real time, if you can play as quick as, depending on how fast your mind allows you to play. It's a really good time. They just released their big first DLC called Rags to Riches. I played it before that came out. I hear this DLC improved the game greatly. You remember at the start of the year, survival games are a hot thing. Between Deep Rock Survivor and Halls of Torment, both of these games were a good time. Dragon's Dogma was a good time as well. Gray Zone, just talked about that. As far as games not from this year, I finally checked out Battle Brothers. I forget the name of the overhaul mod. It greatly increases the difficulty. Be easy to Google, but if you do intend to check this game out, highly recommend the overhaul mod. Once you've played a couple rounds of the base game, I got a sense of the systems. But this was really good. And biggest surprise on this list was probably World of Warcraft. I didn't grow up playing it. I really enjoyed it. I played through Act 1, Tier 1, Chapter 1, whatever they call their big releases or big patches. It was a good time, waiting each week for the vault, doing the dungeons. The solo dungeons were fun. The game feels fluid. The skills feel impactful. I played a Rit Paladin, so like Crusader Strike or whatever it was called had some meat behind it. It was great to pop wings. But surprisingly, and less talked about, Turtle WoW. I played hardcore classic WoW, Turtle WoW, and from what I understand, they do a whole bunch of rebalancing over like true classic WoW. So all the classes are a little bit more interesting and are a little bit more playable. Absolutely loved it. It was such a good time. I totally understand why people are doing OnlyFans, why people are still addicted to it, and why they've been playing it for so long. I had such a good time on Turtle WoW. This isn't like a money thing. I actually just think looking at, even with my limited knowledge of WoW, looking at the balance in the classes of Classic WoW, they're kind of shit. There's clearly winners, big winners, and big losers. And from a systems design standpoint, it looked like Turtle WoW did a good job balancing that out. Play this at your own risk. Obviously, it's not supported by Blizzard, but this was very well time spent. Biggest surprise would have probably been Enshrouded. I did not love it. I maybe only put 10 or 15 hours into the game. If you look at the game on paper, it has all the things that I really like. Open world, interesting crafting system, building a base, survival mechanics, interesting boss fights, interesting puzzles. It's got kind of a more mature Breath of the Wild vibe to it. But for some reason, it just couldn't capture me. I will say, similar to Breath of the Wild, I hate games that have destructive durability systems. Hey, I found this awesome weapon. Let me swing it 30 times and then it breaks. Obviously, you can repair it, but it feels much more destructive than a game like Stalker 2 or Once Human, or just like a standard game that has some sort of repair system. because if you forget to repair it, it breaks and it's gone. And then the last note I'll say is clearly I was late to the game. Elden Ring was incredible. Incredible open world. I've played all the other Souls-like games. I've beaten all the Elden Ring, Soulsborne games. Big fan of Neo 2. I put a lot of hours into that. But Elden Ring plus DLC is definitely the best of the bunch. One of the best games that ever came out. Definitely in my top 5 games of all time, or at least top 10. I'd have to think about that more, but I really enjoyed this. I put a lot of hours into this. But a pretty limited list. You know, what we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. 26 games that I played this year, so just over 2 games a month. That's probably less than usual. There was a couple small games that I dicked around here and there with that weren't worth adding here, or I only put like 5 or 10 hours in. So realistically, I probably played like 30 games, but you can see a lot of them were older games, you know, and the games that did come out this year, like Backpack Hero, were very small, very focused, very specific, which I think is the sentiment of a lot of gamers, where they're either playing older games or they're playing these like hyper niche games. Taking a look at all of this, I wanted to put together my top 10 list of 2024, in case you're wondering what you should be playing next or what you should check out. Got that here. Slowly reveal that. Starting from the bottom. Number 10, Throne of Liberty. Throne of Liberty, the Korean MMO. Wow, that was a pay-to-win game on here. And the truth is, it was fun. It was fun. The combat system felt good. The world was interesting. The monster variety was fun. The dungeon variety was fun. And they did a really good job around community events and bringing players together. I will say I was very active and in the number 1 guild of my server. You know, we fought for rank. Sometimes we were 2, sometimes we were 3. So that changed the game and the dynamic of the game a lot, because it feels good to win and it feels good to be the best. I don't know if I would recommend this game at this point, though. I think for 2 or 3 months at the start, this was a great game. But the fatigue of doing the same thing, needing to log in every day to do the same thing, doing the same dungeons in the exact same route with the exact same moves, really got to me faster than most other MMORPGs I've played. And this is probably true for any RPG I play at this point. I think I'm just older and have lower tolerance for that stuff. I don't want to be doing homework. But Throne of Liberty, my number 10. Number 9, Last Epoch. What can I say? It splits the difference perfectly between the complexity and depth of Path of Exile and the polished blandness of D4. I think for anyone that is trying to get into action RPGs, ARPGs for the first time, and aspires to go deep into Path of Exile, Last Epoch is a place I recommend. It has the perfect balance of simplified systems, great UI, understandable UI, enough systems that you can create a large set of possible builds, but without all the skill bloat and the interaction bloat of Path of Exile. Of course, now we live in a world with Path of Exile 2. Do I recommend Last Epoch or Path of Exile 2 as the starting point into ARPGs? I think that's hard. I think you give both a try. You know, instead of if you go deep into the games and you go deep into their seasons, instead of maybe switching seasons between PoE 1 and PoE 2, I would probably recommend switching seasons between Last Epoch and PoE 2 and just cut PoE 1 out of out of out of the running. That's probably what I'd realistically recommend. The game still has some flaws, but their constellation system is great, whether you're a trader or a solo player. I hope PoE 2 takes their concept of the boons and losses of being a solo player and it incorporates it into their game in an interesting way. I think it's one of the best things that they've done. And then they're both playing around with kind of rune systems like Diablo 2, which is always great. So all around, it's a great game. Highly recommend it. Number 9. WoW. Imagine recommending retail WoW in 2025. Damn, that's crazy. But it really is a good game. If you are not a WoW player, if you're not WoW Andy, if you're not a MMO Andy in general, WoW is generally a good game. I do think the $30, $40 box price plus a $15, $16 monthly subscription is bullshit. And I don't understand how that still exists in the market. Not only that, real money auction with the WoW token, but if you just look away from that, ignore that, if you can afford it, the game plays well, the story is good, the writing is good, even if you're just going in for the most recent expansion, but you can go back to the classics like TBC or Warlords of Draenor. Actually, maybe don't go back to that one. The Panda one, whatever it may be. It's a good game. It's crisp. It's fluid. Skills feel good. I will say the number one downside is zero player expression. This game has been beyond optimized. You know exactly what items you need. You know exactly what stats you need. You know exactly where you should be putting your time. If you want to get into Mythic rating or M+, which I played a lot of M+, and it's actually pretty fun if you have a group of friends that you can get into it with. It's fun to challenge yourself and try to get through as fast as you can. But there will always be that shadow over your head that there is an optimum way to be doing everything. And if you're not doing that, you're doing it actually wrong. And that sucks. But I still had a lot of fun. I think I played this for like 2 months, maybe 3 months. Battle Brothers. Just a great turn-based tactical RPG. I usually do not like games that have extremely large party sizes. I even mentioned I kind of want to play Pillars of Eternity 2. I started the game a couple times. I never finished it. I hear it's a great story. I hear it's a great world. Avowed, the game that's coming out in the near future, takes place in the same world as Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, even though it's not a turn-based RPG anymore, or live-action RPG, CRPG. It's a Skyrim-style first-person RPG now. I would have played that with 1 or 2 characters. But I digress. Battle Brothers. Great systems. Love the wound systems. I love the weapon dynamics and the armor dynamics. There's a lot to learn. There's actually looks like a very simple game. Visually, it's not the most interesting, but there's a lot under the hood. This is a game you can easily plug 400 hours into if you want to do all the different endgame scenarios, all the different worlds, and that doesn't get in. That's before you even go into mods. The overhaul mod I mentioned earlier that I highly recommend. It's just a good time. Recommend it. Number 5, Delta Force. Not much to say here other than I loved Battlefield 2, 3, and 4. We haven't had a great Battlefield in a while, especially a modern one in a while, and this scratches that itch perfectly. I know there's some drama, there's no pay to win aspects, but there's just like a lot of like advertisements in the game trying to get you into the shop and the 50 different types of currencies and this and that. But if you just sit down and if you want to play a large scale FPS shooter that runs well, looks great, is responsive, Delta Force is the best thing we have in the market right now. It gives you the feeling of Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 2, whichever had your heart. So, number 6, Delta Force. Number 5, Dragon's Dogma. This game was a bit of a surprise for me. I am not one of those people that absolutely love Dogma 1. I played it, tried to play it a couple times, but it didn't really capture me. And I don't really know why. It felt a little bit clunkier. But this new one removed a lot of the clunkiness. The world is interesting. The world is beautiful. It is a little bit easy. I played almost all of it with only one pawn. And the biggest criticism is the late game is quite grindy and a little bit boring. But the first 30 to 45 hours of this game, when you're just going through when you're discovering the world, you're jumping off cliffs, things are jumping off cliffs and attacking you, you're climbing on big monsters and attacking it, and just going ape on these insanely cool creatures. It's such a good time. It has good systems, the weapons are good, all the classes feel unique and fun, and you play them differently. The pawns are intelligent. You can customize them. There's consequences for the choices you do and don't make. Overall, they did a really good job here. I think the game still needs work, but similar to Dragon's Dogma 1, I truly believe that this game is going to become something special in its first and possibly second DLC. The foundation of Dragon Dogma 2 is chef's kiss. They did everything right. It didn't scale great into the tail end of the game, but that's very solvable. And once again, Dragon Dogma 1 base game, not very great. It was good enough. It's really the DLC, Dark Horizon, they all put it together that made it a cult classic, beloved cult classic as it is today. And that's just what we need to wait for Dragon Dogma 2. At least that's what I think. DLC 1, whenever that comes, which I'm also surprised we haven't heard about, because I do believe they have confirmed that there will be 2 DLCs for this game. Path of Exile 4. I imagine you were expecting this higher. But I've already made a fair amount of comments about this game through this video, so nothing here should be a surprise. I think WASD as a movement mechanism is very interesting. I think it unlocks some things that the ARPG category has desperately needed, which is being able to cast, move, and attack at the same time. It brings a new life to the genre that it's desperately needed. It is still Path of Exile at its core, so by default, it is a great game. But in its current state, the game is limited in the sense, not limited in the amount of builds you can do, because there's no shortage of items and things you can do with the skill trees that exist today. But for me, it is lacking all the variety of weapon types. You know, there's no swords or spears yet, or the things that are inherently the power fantasies I want to play and power fantasies other people want to play. So I'm waiting for those to come out. And then the other big thing is that currently the economy is in shambles and the crafting system is virtually non-existent. I think people keep referring to it as a crafting system because that's what it's historically been. But today, truthfully, it is just a gambling system. It is a loot box where you throw currency in an item and you get something random back. There's no determinism to it at all. You can't target something even the slightest bit. So it's just not a crafting system. It's a gambling system with extra steps. I don't think I'll be in 2025 or 2026, I guess. I won't necessarily be including non-2025 titles in my top 10 list. I don't know if I'll revisit, or I don't know if I'll allow early access into 1.0 games as candidates. But I am very excited to revisit this and see where this game ends by the end of the year. But those are the two big concerns that I have right now, what they have to fix. All right, and we're in top 3. So for number 3, maybe a bit of a surprise here. Last Spell. Turn-based tactical tower defense game. What a mouthful. This game had me shook. I thought, I was going to play this game and just have a good time. And just plow through it, get bored with it, beat a couple levels, have a good time with it, and put it on the shelf. I was so impressed by how well they executed the quirk system, the skill systems, and the weapon systems of this game. I love the complex combos you can create in this game because the turn system isn't linear. You can move and adjust and attack with any of your team members at the same time without having to end their turn. So they just have a pool of actions, and you can use those actions freely in whatever order, which allows you to do very interesting combos that allows you to think about efficiency in really interesting ways. The gear system is great. It has in depth. It has a lot of skill variety. The level up system is wonderful, where there's meaningful choices between what do you take and taking the best option, but also gambling because you could re-roll them. You only get so many re-rolls in totality. Every system you interact with has the right amount of risk and reward and the right amount of synergy between your characters and defending your village, that every decision matters to the extreme that even one of the systems I love is if you eliminate monsters within the bounds of your city, they leave special corpses behind that can then be salvaged at the end of battle for powerful gear. So by explicitly allowing monsters to enter your village and possibly destroying your buildings, you get rewarded with better gear. Every system in this game is so thoughtful, so clean, so balanced around risk and reward. The last thing I will say about this game is that I didn't finish it. I did love it, but they have DLCs planned and a couple free releases, and I'm desperately waiting for those to come out because I don't want to finish the game and then replay it with these like tacked on things. I want to fully experience it when everything's out, when it's quote unquote complete, and finish the game off in a much richer state that I can't almost imagine because of how rich the game already is. Number 2, Elden Ring. I mean, it's Elden Ring. What else do I need to say? It's Elden Ring. But if Elden Ring is number 2, what's number 1? Stalker 2. Wow. How can a game that it's arguably number 1 core system wasn't present in its release can be my number 1 game? I kind of asked myself the same question, but I was very much surprised by how empty yet interesting the world is. Though there's a lot of white space in the world where it's just open fields, trees, nature, anomalies. Anytime you came across a building or some sort of POI, point of interest, you knew there's going to be something interesting and exciting in there. For a open world sandbox game, I was shocked at how good the writing was and how good the story was, and not only the main story but the side quests that you run into the open world, and the weapon system and the gunplay and how you move through the world and you discover secrets through PDAs and intercoms. Obviously, the game is lacking a lot of the things that people that have only played Gamma are missing, but many of those things don't exist in Stalker games, and that's important to remember. I thought this game was so incredibly well done that I want to continue to build on top of it. As I mentioned before, I'm learning to program so I can create an overhaul mod for this, something like Gamma, but much less transformative, because I think the skeleton of this game is already so wonderful. So for me, Stalker 2 is definitely the game of the year of 2024. It's crazy to say it's better than Elden Ring, but somehow they managed to do it. On top of the story of this game coming out, where their source code got hacked and stolen, their studio got burnt down, then a lot of their staff got drafted into the Ukrainian war, and even though they were able to overcome these things and still release this game that, yes, it has problems, it has flaws. It still is incredible as it is, and has left a big mark on me, at least for 2024. I'm extremely excited to see where this game goes. I'm ecstatic for my next playthrough. I am waiting for another 1 or 2 patches of A-Life to be added, but even without the A-Life system, I had an incredible time. And I must say, unlike a lot of other people, I didn't really run into bugs, crashes, FPS issues. I don't know why. I don't have like some crazy rig or anything. It just ran smoothly for me. And this is just the beginning for Stalker 2. I believe the community is going to go as crazy with mods as they did with Stalker 1 and that trilogy. So keep an eye out for this game. This is a game that you're going to want to check in on every 6 to 8 months for the next few years. Download some mods, engage with them, and re-experience the zone and see how long you can survive. And that is it. That is my top 10 games of 2024. But with that, I'm going to end it there. I'm going to call it there. Thank you for watching the first episode of Surviving Sunday. If you liked what you saw, leave me a like, subscribe. We'll do more of this. Please feel free to leave comments with what you'd like to see, any feedback on what I can do better. I'll continue to try to improve this week over week. And thank you. See you next Sunday. Have an incredible Monday. And have a good night. Cheers.